regular session to order. The Longmont City Council is a return to in-person meetings, and you can wear a mask if you so choose. We are live streaming this meeting over www.longmontcolorado.gov off of our YouTube channel as well. You can also watch it at longmontpublicmedia.org/watch or Comcast channels 8 or 880. Can we have a roll call, please, Don?
Mayor Peck.
Present.
Councilmember Hidalgo-Faring.
Here.
Councilmember Martin.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez.
Here.
Councilmember Waters. Here. Councilmember Yarbrough.
Here.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Let's stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Looks like we have a full house tonight. Anyone wishing to speak at first call public invited to be heard? You'll need to put your name on the list outside the council chambers. Only those on the list will be invited to speak at the first public invited to be heard. Speakers who do not place their names on the list will have the opportunity to speak during the final call public invited to be heard on any item. Anyone wishing to speak on second reading or public hearing items are asked to add their name to the speaker list for each particular item. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes, and we would like you to state your name and address, please. Can I have a motion to approve the September 27th City Council minutes?
Second.
So that's been moved by Councilor Waters, seconded by Councilor Hidalgo-Faring. Let's vote. And that carries unanimously. We are now at the part of the agenda for agenda revisions. Do we have any revisions?
No, Mayor, we had a resolution number correction for item 9D, but other than that, no revisions.
Thank you. And do we have any councilors that want to submit documents and motions to direct the city manager to add agenda items to future agendas? Seeing no one in the queue, I am going to add some agenda items. But first, I just want to make a statement to that in June of this year, I made a motion to direct staff to research legal issues on gun safety ordinances. And since that motion, we've had an open meeting to discuss the various measures to take and executive sessions on legal aspects. So we've been watching the legal landscape. And I think for me it is time to make some ordinances. So I have 5 motions that I'm going to make, and we will have a discussion after each motion. The first one is I move to direct staff to prepare an ordinance on banning open and concealed carry guns in sensitive areas, the ones that are already mandated or stated by the Supreme Court, but to include preschools, daycare centers, playgrounds, and toddler swimming pools at Kanemoto and Roosevelt Parks in Longmont, Colorado.
I'll second.
It's been moved by myself and seconded by Councilor Hidalgo-Faring. Can we have a discussion, please? Councilor Waters.
Thanks, Mayor Peck. I'm going to ask City Attorney, and I know, Eugene, you're not crazy about giving legal advice in public, so I hope this doesn't sound like legal advice, but given the Supreme Court's ruling in how they labeled sensitive places, as you listen to this motion, do those comport with the Supreme Court ruling?
Mayor and Council, Eugene May, City Attorney. So the Supreme Court listed several enumerated sensitive places, legislative assemblies, courthouses, and schools. That list doesn't align exactly with that enumerated list in the Supreme Court cases. There was recently a case out of New York that went through New York's listing of sensitive places. I didn't quite catch all the ones that the mayor's listed. That case struck down prohibitions against firearms in summer camps, upheld it for schools of various types, preschools, universities, what you think of just normal K through 12 type schools. That's the guidance that we have so far from post-Brune Supreme Court ruling.
So the answer is you're not certain.
Nobody's certain of anything right now in Second Amendment law.
But about this list in particular.
Right, and they did uphold government administration buildings, facilities, but that's just one judge's opinion out of Syracuse, of all places.
Could you read that list again?
Yes, and I want to make a statement that I am actually putting on sensitive places where children in particular are, and to our legal advice that the ones that I'm listing also have schools involved in them, because school seems to be a trigger word in acceptance. So I put, along with what has already been stated with government buildings in the list that was just read, to include preschools, daycare centers, playgrounds, and toddler swimming pools. We have 2 toddler swimming pools in our city at Kanemoto and Roosevelt Parks.
But it wasn't to the St. Vrain Valley School District, or that was?
That's already in it. These are included with what is already stated in sensitive areas.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Who is Mayor Pro Tem Rodriguez?
Thank you, Mayor Peck. I'm going to note that the motions being put forward, this one and the following ones, are to put it on an agenda coming up, and not to debate the merit or substance of the motion. So I will be voting in favor of moving these forward to an agenda to debate the merit and substance at that time. Just to let everybody know clearly what my intention is by these votes.
Thank you. So can we vote? Seeing no one else in the queue? And that carries unanimously. Thank you. The second one is I move to direct staff to prepare an ordinance to raise the minimum age to purchase a gun in Longmont, Colorado to the age of 21.
I'll second.
So I made the motion. It was seconded by Councilor Hidalgo Faring. Any discussion on this motion? Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. I'm not going to vote for this one because I strongly believe that the state legislature should be doing this, especially here in Longmont, where we've got Larimer County on the north and Weld County on the north and east, chock full of gun stores that are not going to constrain themselves in this way. I don't think that our doing it within the Longmont city limits would do anything but complicate the lives of our public safety force. And they've got better things to do. And for that matter, our gun stores have better things to do about, in doing good jobs on the background checks they have to do now. So I'm not going to vote for it. I'd be willing to debate it if it comes before us, but I'm not going to vote for it because it doesn't do any good.
Councilor Waters.
Thanks, Mayor Peck. Eugene, I'm going to turn to you again. We've had some conversations in various places about what the federal law is in terms of ownership. It's not purchase of a handgun, right? Someone between ages 18 and 21 can own but can't purchase a handgun. Is that right? So this would be consistent with that, I guess is the question.
Yes, so 18 to 21, you can buy a long gun, but not a handgun.
Yeah. So let me, Mayor Peck, ask, as we go through these, one of the questions for me, it's not about where my heart is, but it kind of where our budget is and what we think to be the implications of anything that we come back and pass. I realize we're just talking about putting them on a ballot. But I assume that if this got to the point where we approve it, this would be one of those that would require personnel to monitor. The policing of gun stores now is up to the ATF or FBI, or, the DEA, the federal government. This would require our local enforcement of this kind of an ordinance. Yeah. So I don't know. Do you have an idea what the estimated cost of that would be?
You know, I don't, and these, if you would like that to come back, then that could be another motion for you.
Well,
But I don't know what it is.
Well, I'm not going to be making motions, but I'm just,
I have no idea.
okay. On September 20th, when we were in the process of approving a contract for Longmont Public Media, you voted against that ordinance because there was money required to be spent. And your no vote was if we couldn't identify where the money was going to come from, what we were going to cut to come up with the money, you voted, and which is a legitimate. I'm not arguing that position, but I guess I'm wondering how this applies, how that same standard applies here.
I am just making the motion, Councillor Waters. The LPM vote is over and done. Can we just
Yeah, but there
stick to
there was a reason stated.
There was.
And a standard that was articulated, and that's if we're going to apply, if you were going to apply it there, I'm wondering if you're going to apply it here.
It isn't up to me to apply that right now. I'm just making the motion. Councillor Hidalgo-Farring.
Okay, thank you. So I seconded this motion, and I do want to bring these forward for discussion. I think, during our executive sessions, we had some very robust conversations. We've had constituents very passionate on both sides of the aisle who really don't know what those conversations entailed, where we stand. And I think this is a great opportunity for us as council members to really state where we stand on the issue. Part of that conversation, then could be the potential cost. But, during this time, I want to know, I want our residents to know where we feel on these issues, to have that robust conversation in public. I thought we had some great input, but nobody was able to hear it. So I think this is a good time to be able to share those comments, those thoughts and considerations, and as well as continuing to hear from our public.
Seeing no one else in the queue, let's vote. So that passes with Councillor Martin and Councillor Waters in opposition. Thank you. The third one is I move to direct staff to prepare an ordinance to require a 10-day waiting period to receive possession of a gun purchased in Longmont. So that fails for a lack of...
Sorry.
I'm
sorry, I will second. I was writing down.
Are you going to...
I will second it.
So that's been seconded by Councillor Hidalgo-Farring. Let's have discussion. That was a 10-day waiting period. Seeing no discussion or no one in the queue, let's vote. And that passes with Councillor Martin and Councillor Waters in opposition. The fourth one, I move to direct staff to prepare an ordinance banning the sale of unserialized and ghost guns in Longmont, Colorado.
Second.
So it's been moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Hidalgo-Thering. Let's have discussion. Seeing no one in the queue, let's vote. Oh, Councilor Waters, I'm sorry.
What's the current state of the law on this one?
Mayor and council, I think it was in August, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms released a final rule redefining ghost guns, unserialized guns, and prohibiting the commercial sale of those. And a Delaware court struck down Delaware state law that banned the possession of ghost guns, but it didn't strike down the portion that banned the sale of ghost guns.
So it's legal somewhere at some level? Ghost guns?
They could ban the sale, but not the possession.
Okay, all right.
Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. Did not Boulder County just recently also ban gun shows? I don't remember whether it was just at the fairgrounds or whether it was all of Boulder County.
Mayor and council, I think it was gun shows at the fairgrounds, their own property.
Thank you.
Seeing no one else in the queue, let's vote. So that carries with Councilor Martin in opposition. The last one is, I move to direct staff to prepare an ordinance on signage to be posted at gun dealerships in Longmont. The message warning of the danger to children of guns, the danger to children if guns are not in locked storage container.
I'll second.
So it's been moved by myself, seconded by Councilor Hidalgo-Thering. Discussion? Seeing no one in the queue, let's vote. And that passes unanimously. I would like to say, thank you, Council. I would like to say that I have had discussions with our legal department twice before deciding on how to word this. And the decisions and the cases coming down in the country, the decisions around those are all over the place. They're different judges, different states, it is the New York cases that are really moving the discussion of this. So I hope that we don't have any lawsuits against it, but we'll see what happens. Thank you. The next thing on our agenda is the city manager's report.
No report, Mayor, Council.
Thank you. Do we have any special reports and presentations tonight? No. So now we are at first call and public invited to be heard. You have 3 minutes. Please state your name and address. The first one on the agenda is Sally Behrens. Up here. Yes.
I'm Sally Behrens Petrovic. I'm at 1419 Red Mountain Drive. Okay, when you Google Longmont,
Sally, if you turn that way and they can't hear you, you have to be right at the mic.
what do you mean?
Do you
Like
see?
this?
Yeah. The people in the back can't hear.
Okay, got it.
Perfect.
When you Google Longmont, it is described as a bedroom community with an ill-planned infrastructure. For the many residents whose only ingress and egress access is the already heavily burdened Sunset Street. Their lives will be negatively impacted by the approval of the Rivertown and Bohm Farms developments. God forbid an emergency vehicle needs to make a rescue anywhere on Sunset between 9th and Boston. It will have devastating consequences. Longmont was never meant to support the rapid recent growth. Just because there's an empty lot, a high-density complex, such as the apartment monstrosity on 9th and Race, does not need to be built on it. Developers don't care about the people of Longmont, and it appears the city of Longmont has caved to their demands. What is your model? Is there a plan to ease the already heavily burdened infrastructure? It is extremely troubling that council consistently approves of development projects that overwhelm our already burdened infrastructure. We are destined to become the ash heap of Boulder County.
Thank you, Sally. Roxy Olson.
Hi, Roxy Olson, 1678 Judson Drive, Longmont. First, I wanted to compliment council on the fact that in one of my utility bills, I got a request to go on and fill out a survey about what issues are most important, what are top of mind issues for the citizens of Longmont. And I wondered if in the results of that, if smart meters were something that people were crying out for, because it's being pushed. And as a $14 million expenditure, I wondered how much emphasis was put on that by the city of Longmont, or if there was more emphasis on crime, concern about overcrowding, homelessness, traffic, as was just mentioned. Traffic on Pratt on 119 is intolerable during rush hour. Lots of infrastructure things could be done that make it seem like smart meters should be kind of at the bottom of the heap. I just wondered what the push was for smart meters. And I'm going to read some things about the difference between analog meters and smart meters. I tried to print this out, and my technology wouldn't work, which is another argument against smart meters, because the more technology you have, the more there is to go wrong. I couldn't get my printer to work. So I will email you each a copy of this study. But it talks about how analog meters are grounded. They are directly connected to the ground via spark gap technology protected from surges. Smart digital meters are not grounded. And that is one of the dangers. They're not properly protected from surges of current. And I have a quote from an electrical engineer named William Bathgate. He talks about how smart meters have varistors on them, which are useful for short duration protection in case of high voltage surges. But they're not suited to handle sustained surges. They can melt, burn, or explode. And as we look at what happened just a few miles to the south of us in Lafayette and Superior, we saw all kinds of things that had never been seen before. If you watch videos of the fire, it didn't move like a normal fire. There were houses that just exploded and were consumed within a couple of minutes. He says this varistor that they have is a small with electronic part that cannot withstand more than 300 volts AC surge. The part will explode when a line voltage surge exceeds this limit, such as when a tree branch touches the high voltage lines or lightning strike occurs nearby. Once this varistor explosion has occurred, it permits high voltage transfer to the other circuit board components and the circuit board substrate.
Thank you, Roxy.
You're welcome.
Del Kelly.
Okay, my name is Doe Kelly, and I live on Barberry Drive in Longmont. Good evening, City Council. I'm here to speak on behalf of Coloradans for Safe Technology, among other. I'm dedicating these remarks to the benefit of all sentient beings without a single exception, including all the pollinators that we all wish to see saved from extinction. I would wish for my words to have the effect of causing the City of Longmont to seriously halt its plan for implementing wireless smart meters in Longmont. For more than 2 years, I and others have repeatedly come to council to speak. We have provided you with information, including science, to do with the many and varied problems of smart meters. We have brought you esteemed experts in this field who have spoken to you in study sessions, public comments, and an online smart meter town hall meeting. A world-renowned scientist researching the wireless EMF disappearing bees connection wrote to you directly to ask you to change course. A landmark case won against the FCC in August of 2021 left us up in the air as regards radio frequency safety guidelines. It indicated the current guidelines were woefully inadequate and needed revision according to the science. We, the people, have told you repeatedly, we do not want another layer of wireless electrosmog placed around our dwellings and in our neighborhoods. We've advocated on behalf of the disappearing pollinators and the precautionary principle, and yet, in spite of our advocacy of safe technology, the first smart meters were to be rolled out last week in South Longmont. Bee Culture magazine of American beekeeping has published 2 articles on the impact of electromagnetic fields to bees and pollinators. The executive director of Environmental Health Trust, Theodoros Skaratos, says the following: "We are thankful for these important articles. FCC and ICNIRP radiation limits were designed for humans, not animals. Insects, birds, and airborne species are unprotected, as regulations do not apply to wildlife. Trees, plants, and bacteria are also impacted by radio frequency, yet are ignored by human-centric regulations." She continues, "The judge ruled in our historic lawsuit, EHT et al. Versus FCC, that the FCC had ignored scientific evidence on environmental effects when the agency refused to update our 1996 FCC exposure limits," end quote. And I have a couple of handouts that you guys can share among you that talk about that lawsuit. One of them is an article from before the lawsuit, describing the lawsuit, and one of them is an article from after the lawsuit. So who should I give that to?
Yeah,
Dawn.
to Dawn would be great, Joe.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Kendra.
Kendra Pearsall, 14501 County Road 3, Longmont. Okay, so C.C. Duchette of Massachusetts for Safe Technology refers to the recent federal funding when she writes, "What are the odds of some of the federal smart meter funding can be used to fix the wireless radiation problem?" As you may know, at the EMF Medical Conference, practitioners were indicating installation of smart meters is one of the leading causes of electromagnetic illnesses, end quote. As a practitioner of natural health, I have a doctorate degree in naturopathic medicine, and I am very familiar with the epidemic of health problems caused by EMF technology and wireless technology. So I would ask you and would personally wish to know, will you seek to quantify with a health questionnaire or other in the South Longmont test zone any signs of electromagnetic illness that may arise in the population as an early result of the rollout in this zone? And if not, why not? If it is a test zone after all, and I would think because there are so many questions and claims about the adverse health effects of these meters, that as our city officials, you might want to make use of the situation to quantify health effects, if any, with C.C. Duchette's above quote in mind. An October 5th headline informs us 97% of smart meters fail to provide promised customer benefits. Less than 3% of 2009's taxpayer and ratepayer funded smart meters now deliver full customer benefits. A recent study shows, end quote. We brought to your attention that Dr. Tim Sheckley and his energy management and measurement, aka EMA system. This is a quote from his article in Solar Today magazine. The EMA system could provide all of the functions of an AMI smart meter, but is mainly intended to use the measured data inside the premises to manage energy. And it uses fiber to connect with the utility community and microgrid using the internet. Emma's purpose is decentralized control is fundamentally different than conventional AMI metering. In our opinion, utility meters could and should be hardwired to the premises in Longmont by simply running the data through the existing fiber optic or cable connections. We have the Next Light fiber optic cables. Why not use them? This way you would totally avoid radio frequency radiation exposures and skip the exposure to even more toxic wireless for all life forms, not just humans. Thank you.
Thank you, Kendra. The next one is, I'm assuming, is Jim Hubbard? Jill, okay, sorry.
I'm Jill Hubbard. My address is 1323 Somerset Circle here in Longmont. And this is a bit of a continuation from what Kendra was speaking to. In our opinion, our money, both federal and local, should go to such solutions instead of AMI concerning the fiber optic connection. The 14 million Longmont spent on AMI could go toward this or similar technologies. We already have fiber to the premises in most of the cities. Why are we not using our existing fiber optic network for this purpose instead of wireless AMI with all its many risks, dangers, and disadvantages? Why are we so adamant about it? And where is the report from the city that tells us in great detail and specificity exactly how it is that AMI will get us to the 100% renewable energy benchmark by 2030? And how exactly was it determined that AMI would be the #1 recommendation on the Climate Action Task Force's list for achieving energy independence? It is credibly reported and stated that smart meters and other wireless equipment can require up to 10 times more energy to operate. Where will this energy come from? How is this sustainable, and was this factored into the Climate Action Task Force recommendations and subsequent City Council vote on AMI? There's another bothersome issue that has arisen. In recent weeks, several of us have become aware of patents bearing the name of Councilwoman Martin relating specifically to utility services.
Excuse me, Jill, direct your comments to the chair, not to the mayor, not to specific council people.
I wasn't aware I was doing that. Relating specifically to utility services. Patent number 10459-411, dated 10/29/2019, and publication 201-603-78074, published 10/29/2016. None of us are expert in reading patents, but from a layperson's perspective, it would appear that these patents are for inventions to do directly, patents that have to do directly with utility grids, smart grid technology, and electric vehicle charging infrastructure. It is no secret that Ms. Martin spent her career working in the field of smart grid technology. It is also in the public record that she worked in the past 10 years for Aclara Technology. According to the city site.
Thank you, Jill. Kim Edmondson. I did, I'm sorry. Can you just wait a minute? Kim, Greg is up. I skipped him on the list.
Greg Jensen, Grays Peak Drive. This is a continuation of the three previous speakers. It's also a public record that she worked in the past years for Aclara Technology. According to the city site, Aclara is the company who is contracted to install the smart meters in Longmont.
These findings are of concern to all of us. I have this to hand to the council. Based on the things that we've talked about so far, it is our considered opinion if Ms. Martin has any vested interest in inventions that will be or could be used in either the plan to electrify the city or in the rolling out of the advanced metering infrastructure, that it would be of benefit to our community to have full disclosure of any such moneyed interest, whether it be a part of a retirement portfolio, golden parachute, or any other form of investment instrument. There is no way for us to know if there's any financial conflict of interest, present or future. We are therefore requesting that Ms. Martin provide the community with transparency to do with any inventions, stocks, services, or things having to do with AMI and or electrification of the city and the electric vehicles whereby she stands to financially benefit. If she is not able or willing to do so, we request that she recuse herself from any or all decisions having to do with the AMI or electrification plans of the city. We request that City Council look at its own charter for guidance in conflicts of interest and or ethics concerns. Additionally, in the light of the points made earlier, we strongly request that City Council withdraw from its contract with Landis GYR and shelve its program for rolling out the AMI, at the very least, until the federal government, in the form of the FCC, adequately and responsibly complies with the court-ordered mandate to update its guidance on radio frequency safety levels based on the 11,000 pages of science submitted to the FCC over 7 years at its own request. To pretend that this technology is safe when we do not have adequate safety guidelines in place based on current science makes fools of us all. Thank you.
Thank you. Kim Edmondson.
Hello, I'm Kim Edmondson at Bittersweet Lane. Since you all seem to have little concern about the health and environmental impacts of smart meters, ignoring the piles of science sent to you from various concerned citizens, I'm going to come at it in a language you might better understand, numbers and money. $14 million for smart meters that only reduce carbon by 5%. Was that pre-hyperinflation pricing, or will it be much more than that? Already raised without raising taxes, you say. So how is it not creating a tax any different than just raising the rates you charge for something everyone uses? It's not. The only difference is that it does not need to be put up to a public vote, or even authorized to make such decisions. Marcia Martin has stated in the Longmont Leader on August 26th of this year that we need to fully move away from fossil fuels. This would include natural gas. Have you sat and done the math of what it would cost to retrofit the 22,600 housing units, not including businesses and other entities? She cited the failure of the gas lines in Texas during a cold spell as an excuse. We are much colder than Texas. According to the U.S. Department of Energy, Texas is in zones 1 through 3, based on average year-round temperatures. Colorado's are in zones 5 and 6. To retrofit a current home with a furnace, to put in a heat pump runs $4,900 to $12,500. I guess Marcia failed to realize that the Department of Energy does not recommend heat pumps outside zones 1 through 3. You would still need gas to provide heat even with a heat pump in your region. There are a lot of hot water heaters that use natural gas as well. The cost of a tankless heating system that's electric is $12,000 to $3,500 to install. This does not factor the electricity used by the system monthly. For a family of 4, like mine, the additional cost would be $40 per month. Natural gas historically is much less expensive and why it's used so widely. Do you expect the residents to pony up their own money to retrofit their homes to save the earth? Or will you get it from the excess fees generated by the smart meters that have been known to up people's utility bills by up to 500%? On the city's info page on smart meters, you've already told us that the current meters are undercharging. I wonder, according to whom and what metric? I guess you really think we're all that stupid to believe that lie. $40 a month for many families now with the current hyperinflation will make them choose between heating or eating. The Biden Inflationary Reduction Act, which creates funding for these green projects, is causing massive hardships to many in this country. Uncontrolled printing of money leads to increased prices of everything. I feel it is irresponsible of this council to continue to chase grants and generate funds behind the community's back to implement a zero carbon plan. It's not that I do not want clean air and water for my children. I don't feel this is a safe way forward. LPC will pass on the cost of meeting your green goals right on to the citizens. That is why they are willing to do away with coal and natural gas. They'll make their money regardless of what source you force them to use on us. Marcia's life work includes writing software for the smart grid, meters, and charging system for vehicles. Her name are on patents. According to her resume, she worked for Aclara, which is the company that is contracted to install these meters. Whether or not there's financial conflict of interest is questionable.
Thank you. You can finish your sentence.
I feel her tunnel vision of refusing to hear about the safety concerns is dangerous.
Thank you. Elsie Wilkins.
My name is Elsie Wilkins, and I live at 8664 Middle Fork Road. I'm going to remind you in the audience of the studies supporting the dangers of EMF. Are you aware that the U.S. government first published documents acknowledging the existence of harmful EMF and the effects nearly 50 years ago? Are you also aware that this included the 1971 Naval Medical Research Institute report and a follow-up report from the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA, in 1981? Since then, the health effects of EMF has been cataloged in the Bio Initiative report, composed of 29 scientists and authors from 10 countries. The Bio Initiative report group released an update in 2017, a massive 650-page report that contains 1,800 new studies supporting the dangers of EMF. An even more comprehensive collection of nearly 30,000 studies with more than 6,300 summaries. If this is overwhelming, just start out with Dr. Joseph Mercolet's book on the dangers of EMF, 5G, Wi-Fi cell phones, and the hidden harms and how to protect yourself. So I'm going to repeat these two links. It's bioinitiative.org, and the other one is emf-portal.org/en. Would you please check this information? Just a reminder, and I also have one question. After I read about these reports, I was wondering, is there any other species on Earth that pollutes their environment intentionally? Because electrification, it is air pollution, total air pollution, and not just polluting the air, but polluting the trees, the soil, the waters, humans, most of all. And it's a huge concern. What has happened to us as human beings? Are we forgetting who we are and just polluting our environment?
Thank you, Elsie.
May I pass out some information?
You can give them to the city clerk at the end, Don. Steve Alchuler.
Hi, my name is Steve Altschuler. I live at 1555 Taylor Mountain Drive. I like to consider myself a constitutionalist, even though I am not a lawyer, but I know the Constitution is our guideline for everything in America. I have a real, I don't know how to say it. I'm not too fond of liberals. I think Biden and Polis and the federal government and a lot of the state government, they're communists that are trying to destroy our country. Now, I say that realizing most of you are liberals. I don't put you guys in that same category, but I think a lot of your ideals are misguided by what state and federal people put in the news all the time. So last week you were lied to repeatedly about guns. One person said that there were I think they said there were like 1 million guns in Washington, D.C. on January 6th. And I don't think there were any guns, let alone illegal. The FBI and the DOJ scoured hundreds of tapes from hotels, car rentals, B&Bs, and there's never been a single report of people finding hidden guns ready to attack the Capitol building. Somebody also came up here and said, if there was a mass shooting in Longmont, that it would be the fault of all of you. And that is completely false. If you follow the Constitution, you can't be at fault. You can be at fault if you go against the Constitution. But the fact is, it may happen because some criminal got their hands on a gun. It may happen because you voted to make Longmont a sanctuary city, where criminals are released back into our society instead of being held in jail. It may happen because our state releases drug dealers, rioters, car thieves, and gang members with no real punishment. It may happen because schools are no longer allowed to report troublemakers to the police, so nobody's watching them as they get older. But as long as you uphold the Constitution, you're doing the job that you were elected to do. The average mass shooter kills 11 people before the police can stop them. When they're stopped by a good guy with a gun, the average is 2. 76% of all mass shootings are in gun-free zones. By making more gun-free zones, you increase the chance of a shooting. The Supreme Court has already ruled several times about our Second Amendment. To pursue your ideas against the Supreme Court is a huge waste of Longmont's time and money. Annual gun deaths in America are less than 1/3 of 1% of car deaths. You can outlaw cars. Compared to drug deaths, it's like 0.001%. And we would love to get drugs off the streets. Your gun control measures are a power grab solution looking for a problem. One last note, why do you have a security guard in the lobby? Can I get a city-paid policeman at my house to protect my wife and daughter too? Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Mary Ann Niehaus. Is Mary Ann here? Thank you, Stan Gelb.
Good evening. My name is Stan Gelb, and I'm a Longmont resident. And virtually every other municipality in Boulder County has already enacted multiple gun violence prevention ordinances, as have our county commissioners, and many of our fellow municipalities took these actions months ago. I'm addressing particularly those of Longmont City Council who have just expressed doubts about gun violence prevention ordinances. 106 people in America, on average, died of gunshots this very day. 106 Americans will die from gunshots tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. For how long will Longmont citizens need to be among that daily 106 before you act? Claims that gun violence prevention belongs to our state legislature are just wrong. By Longmont joining with all of our other Boulder County sister cities, that will help put the necessary pressure on our state legislature to pass the needed gun violence prevention laws for our entire state. What will it take? When the next school shooting occurs, what will you say to the grieving parents when they ask you why you chose to do nothing?
Stan,
Do you really?
can you just direct your comments to the mayor, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Do you really believe there's justification for doing nothing that would protect the people of Longmont from the epidemic of gun violence? Do you think Longmont's immune to such terrible tragedies as the King Soopers shooting? What will it take? Thank you.
Thank you, Stan. George Tristan.
George Tristan, 1703 Whitehall Drive. Honorable Mayor Peck and distinguished council members, last week I attended my very first Longmont City Council meeting. I sat and listened to 6 or more speakers express their thoughts regarding needed gun-controlled ordinances. I guess you listened to them. Most of what I listened to was rooted in emotion and fear. The speakers spoke as if they had all the answers, that the City Council failed to understand the seriousness of the matter and were failing in their duties to remedy the problem. I, however, will not tell you how to do your jobs or pretend that I have all the answers. What I will say is this, that I firmly believe that the issue surrounding gun violence is much more about the issue of violence than it is about guns. Tragic mass murders in schools, movie theaters, and grocery stores capture the attention and sympathy of the public, and rightly so. What doesn't capture the attention of the public is that 4 to 5 Coloradans are dying daily from drug overdose. In the time I have left, I would like to share some vital statistics and use data to illustrate my point. Per the Colorado Department of Public Health, in 2021, 366 Coloradans died from homicide. 274 of these deaths were attributed to firearms. 1,370 Coloradans died from suicide, 5 times the number attributed to firearms. And 1,881 Coloradans died from drug overdose, nearly 7 times the number attributed to firearms. A cursory examination of the data should lead most people to believe that the most significant problem facing Coloradans today is a mental health crisis. Additional data that I will submit as follows. On September 11, 2001, 2,977 people were killed when airplanes were used as weapons. In 1973, an arson-related mass murder occurred at a gay bar in New Orleans, killing 32. In 1990, 87 people were killed in New York City in a disco, again by arson. In 2016, 84 people were killed, 10 of which were children, after a bus slammed into a crowd celebrating Bastille Day. In September of this year, Miles Sanderson stabbed and killed 11 people in Saskatchewan, Canada. On Thursday, October 6th, a man on the Las Vegas Strip stabbed 10 people, killing 2. And on Saturday, October 9th, a man intentionally drove into a crowd and killed 1 person, injuring 4 in Golden, Colorado. These are but a few examples of violence that resulted in the loss of many lives in which a gun was not involved. In my humble opinion, the root cause of deadly violent crime is not the weapon. The root cause is the violent people who commit these crimes. Thank you.
Thank you. Lance Whitaker.
Happy one on after the violent one. All right. My name is Lance Whitaker. I'm a longtime resident, 40 years. I live at 1750 Collier Street. I'm a voting libertarian. Long live the porcupine. Today's national day is Sausage Pepperoni Day, or Sausage Pizza Day. Seeming boring today, I decided to look up tomorrow's day. Tomorrow's day is Farmer's Day, Free Thought Day, Gumbo Day, Savings Day, Bring Your Teddy Bear to Work Day, Curves Day, Emergency Nurse Day, Fossil Day, Stop Bullying Day, and Take Your Parents to Lunch Day. So as you can see, your agenda will be full tomorrow. I would like to also say that I would like to see people respond to cannabis hospitality as a non-alcoholic alternative to art, culture, and music. To show you the city council on what I'm talking about, I would like to give you all a copy of the Rooster magazine today. This month we have illustrations by the illustrator of Goosebumps. Thank you, Mayor and Council.
Thank you, Lance. Amy Weinstein.
Mayor Peck and council members, I come to you today wearing two hats, the hats of a mother and grandmother and the hat of the chair of the Boulder County Democratic Party, which is also called the BCDP. We passed a gun violence prevention resolution in July of 2022. I'm not going to fully read it out loud here tonight, though I am going to provide council with a copy and can email a copy if you like. I'm going to say, though, that since we passed this resolution, I put a lot of thought into gun violence. Without any action on the part of local, state, and federal government, we will clearly be left with the same, the threat of weapons in daily life killing innocent people. I assure you that if one of the school, grocery store, concert, theater, or parade shooters were using a muzzle loader at the time they committed their crimes, the sheer carnage we've seen from contemporary incidents would not be the same. The Second Amendment of the Constitution does allow for the right to bear arms. There are different interpretations of what that means. As a parent of children who were in middle school and high school during the Columbine shooting, whose kids had played in sports tournaments at Columbine High School before and after the time of the shooting, I am still perplexed with both the Second Amendment, its varied interpretations, and the fact that we as a society have become desensitized to the effects of current gun legislation and its impacts. Unless it happens near us or to someone we know, we are happy to sweep it under the rug. I certainly had trouble sending my kids back to school each and every time a school shooting happened. Columbine was in 1999, and we continue to deal with this issue today with the tragic, most recent Uvalde, Texas shooting. The point is, there are arguments to be made for how to create sensible gun violence protection, and we citizens depend on our local, state, and federal representatives to work through this with us. It may not be the sweeping plan in the BCDP resolution document that is similar to what Louisville and Boulder adopted, though perhaps Longmont City Council can take the incremental step more like what Lyons created. And I will say I wrote this before I came, so I'm really pleased with the 5 motions that Mayor Peck put forward tonight and with the ensuing debate that will happen. We need to work with the community to make a plan, bring the stakeholders together to see where we can work to create agreement and not wait until something horrific happens in our community. Thank you for the motions tonight, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Amy. Polly Christensen.
Polly Christensen, 410 Judson Street. Mayor and Council. I'm here to speak on the ordinance to create an attainable housing fund. I'm totally against this ordinance, and here is why. This ordinance is unbelievably vague. It does not define attainable housing, which is a term coined by the real estate developer and builder lobby. 2, it does not establish any criterion beyond 80 to 120% AMA of household income, which leaves out single people who now make up 40% of adults. Number 3, it does not specify an amount for the fund, although I did hear this council discuss several weeks ago an amount of $800,000 while admitting that the Affordable Housing Fund would be underfunded this year. This is a distraction from affordable housing, and it also undermines it. It does. What is the history of this initiative? It was created and demanded by Prosper Longmont, a part of Longmont Economic Development Partnership, the outsourced economic development entity for Longmont City government that is on a yearly contract. What is the mission of LEDP? Championing, this is from their website, championing business and their owners. There's not one word mention about employees. In fact, the director, when asked about the minimum wage in Colorado, did not know. Prosper Longmont is a branch of this publicly funded organization and talks a very good game, but it is really the same aim as the real estate developer builder lobby. Deregulation, changing codes and ordinances, commercializing our neighborhoods, and making more profit for the real estate developer builder lobby. That has been unregulated since 1972 and has decimated home ownership for Americans. Here's from a quote from Prosper Longmont. Attainable housing is non-subsidized for sale housing that is affordable to households with incomes of 80 to 120% household incomes, AMI. If it's non-subsidized, why are we subsidizing it? Number two, this is quoting from their website. Current policies that restrict housing supply have created an environment with home prices continue to outpace income levels. That's code for the affordable housing ordinance needs to be eliminated. Restrictions on ADUs need to be eliminated. Restrictions on short-term rentals need to be eliminated. Restrictions on metro districts for residential housing need to be eliminated. Please don't do this distraction. It's a waste of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Polly. David Kimmett. Oh, I'm at least
My name is David Kimmett, 9536 Schlegel Street, Longmont. Thank you, Mayor Peck and council members. I'm here tonight to talk about something not quite so controversial, maybe. It's a plant that's growing, unfortunately now, in the wild in Longmont. It's a non-native plant called bittersweet. I live on Schlegel Street, which is, as many of you are aware, unincorporated Boulder County, surrounded by the city of Longmont. But the plant is growing along the banks of Dry Creek, which is part of the city of Longmont and is operated under the Parks and Open Space Department. I've made I discovered this plant 3 years ago. 2 years ago, it started to infest our yard along the banks of Dry Creek. The problem with the plant is it's poisonous. It's a really pretty plant. It's non-native to Colorado. Unfortunately, it's not on the state's noxious weed species list yet because we apparently have the only case of it in the entire state. I've been in contact with the city's Parks Department about this, and I haven't really heard a response from that, informing them of what's going on. I've been in touch with Boulder County Noxious Weed Management, haven't heard anything from them, so eventually I reached out to the state of Colorado Department of Agriculture, and they were quite surprised. They said, wow, that's in the state. Can you put this on our online mapper, which helps them identify certain noxious plant infestations. They suggested I talk to CSU's Department of Agriculture. I did, and they were surprised, and one of the professors actually wants to come down and bring his students to take a look at it. He's that surprised. So it's a problem. It apparently is confined from Airport Road going west toward Willow Farm Park, or going east, sorry. Airport Road going east along Dry Creek to Willow Farm Park. It doesn't seem like it's made it into Willow Farm Park, and it doesn't seem like it is west of Airport Road. So it's in a pretty confined area for now. However, my wife said today she thought she saw it at Golden Ponds. It's spread by birds because birds do not have a reaction to it. Unfortunately, it only takes a few berries to poison a child. So the berries look delicious. If you walk along the Dry Creek Greenway right now, you'll see it. It's growing as a vine, creeping among different plants, trees, other species. It's almost like a kudzu infestation in the southeast of the U.S. So something I'm trying to make somebody aware of while we can nip this in the bud, literally, before it gets worse. I think at this stage we might be able to take care of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Strider, save the best for the last.
Thank you much. Being a Southern boy, I know kudzu pretty well. I'm Strider Benston, 951 West 17th Avenue. A previous speaker made one interesting statement. He said that gun deaths in this country are less than 1/3 of 1% of car deaths. Well, there were 49,000 gun deaths in this country last year. If his numbers are correct, that would mean 15 million people every year get killed by cars. So that's the kind of facticity we're dealing with. The 49,000 gun deaths last year, 2/3 of them were suicides. And of the rest, you have accidents, children playing with a gun, murders, and other kinds of things. But anyway, that's the type of facticity we're dealing with. I appreciate the G5 people, the smart people, smart meter, because I learned a lot from listening tonight, and they got me on their side unless I learned differently by studying it deeper. Milovan Kundera, Czechoslovakia, some of you know his movies and writing, said, man's struggle against absolute power is the struggle of memory against forgetting. That's why one political party in this country is out to abolish history and abolish books and doing everything they can to abolish voting rights, which I have spent my entire life to win the right to vote and to employ it in this country. On the guns thing, the person said, oh, they didn't find any guns in D.C. Well, the guns were all across the Potomac in a couple of hotels over there, and if they'd have taken over the Capitol, they would have brought the guns in and started a civil war at that time. Some of them are up for a sedition trial right now, and if they had done what they intended, we would be in a civil war with perhaps hundreds of thousands or millions dead. Now, as far as the courts, the illegally constituted Supreme Court that abolished gun restriction in New York City, if that had been the case in Washington, we would be in that civil war because they would have brought their guns with them. So 4 or 5 of them did, but they were confiscated. They were afraid of the rest being confiscated, so they left them across the river to bring them later on. But Hitler blamed the Reichstag fire on the communists, which Hitler himself had started, but they still had courts in Germany, and
Thank you, Strider.
they were declared innocent, so he changed the courts after that. Thank you.
So that ends public invited to be heard. Is there anybody else in the public that would like to speak at this time? It's the public. Hang on. So I do see one person with his hand up. Yeah. Okay.
My name is Jeff Jones. I am a resident of Boulder County. My address is 3537 Nyland. And I am here because I have 2 concerns about the electrification, and it is essentially money and health. And first off, there's the concern of spending quite a lot of money on electrification that pushes people into electric vehicles that they cannot afford. And if this is the case, it could be seen as an elitist technocrat agenda, further dividing people, dividing the haves and the have-nots. And my second concern is the smart meter aspect of electrification proposal and its unprecedented impact because there have been no previous generations that have experienced this. And so my concerns from the standpoint of health, from what I have learned, first off is heat damage, and that is EMF radiation can cause dielectric heating, and this heating can create an oscillating frequency passing over body cells, and this heating can cause cell death, cell damage, cell mutations, which can eventually lead to cancer. There's other problems with essentially with sleep. There's sleep problems, there's fertility problems, and there's developmental problems, specifically with infants and children who have EMF exposure. And I can just say that the references that I used are from defendershield.com, and I don't have anything of paper to give. Thank you all for what you do. I appreciate it, and I do have a big concern with the electrification proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That closes public invited to be heard. Councillor Martin, do you have a comment?
Thank you, Mayor Peck. Yes, I do, because I know that if I wait until the end of the meeting, the people who are walking out now will already be gone. And since there have been personal attacks against me, I would like to point out, and I think you should sit back down, thank you, several falsehoods in what you spoke. The first thing is that the first time that a Longmont resident accused me of having patents in smart meters, I made a full disclosure to the city attorney of my lack of financial interest in the advanced metering infrastructure industry. The fact that I no longer own any stock, in fact, I hardly ever did, that what the people didn't understand was the difference between an inventor, which means the person who originated the intellectual property, and an assignee, who is the person who owns the patent and gets money from royalties on the patent. I am the inventor on many patents, about half of which have something to do with data communications and advanced metering infrastructure. I am the assignee on none. I cannot make a dime. I was paid a salary to do the work that I did. I'm proud of the work that I did, but I already made the money just from being paid as an engineer. And that's all there is to it. I hope no one thinks that engineers need to be held responsible for someone's future objection to a technology that derives from their work. That would not be freedom. I think, Aclara. I worked for Aclara. I did not develop intellectual property for Aclara. I was in the marketing division on new product concepts with Aclara. I was only there for two and a half years. And the way that the government procurement works, I had no idea that Aclara was going to be contracted with for the installation of the meters. In fact, because the way the government contracting works, I also had no idea that Landis and Gear was going to be the selected vendor for the smart meters. So there's no way that even if I did have a financial interest, I could have put my thumb on the scale in any of these ways. What I did do was state in public what I thought the requirements needed to be for the city's metering infrastructure. And there were two things that I stated. One was that we needed to do more than just read the meters, but instrument the grid so that we could understand where the hot spots were so that the system could work well and help us through the electrification process. The other thing was I thought that it was a good idea that we should use fiber backhaul in collecting the metering data if it was possible. It turned out that there was no advanced metering vendor that could use fiber backhaul that met the other requirements that the staff developed for advanced metering infrastructure. So if we were to do what Dr. Shockley suggested, the city of Longmont would have to engage in research and development to essentially create a new advanced metering infrastructure, which would slow the whole process down by many years and cause Longmont to fail in its greenhouse gas reduction goals. I'm going to address the many other errors of fact afterwards, but I wanted to know that I wanted the people who made personal accusations against me to know that they had every reason to know better. Any reasoning adult can know the difference.
Councillor Martin.
Too much time.
No, you now are attacking them. So we need to stop this conversation. Thank
Okay.
you very much for explaining yourself. Thank everybody in the audience, in public, for your comments. We really appreciated them. So we are now at consent agenda and introduction and reading by title of first reading ordinances. Does anybody on council need to have a break?
I just need to get more water.
Let's take a 5-minute break, please. Okay. So now we are at the consent agenda. Dawn, would you mind reading the consent agenda into the record?
Absolutely, Mayor. The ordinances on consent tonight will be on for second reading and public hearing on October 25th, 2022. Item 9A is ordinance 2022-36, a bill for an ordinance making additional appropriations for expenses and liabilities of the City of Longmont for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2022. 9B1 is ordinance 2022-37, a bill for an ordinance fixing and levying taxes upon the real and personal property within the City of Longmont for the year 2022 to pay budgeted city expenses for the 2023 fiscal year. 9B2 is ordinance 2022-38, a bill for an ordinance fixing and levying taxes upon the real and personal property within the Longmont Downtown Development District for the year 2022 to pay budgeted expenses of the Longmont Downtown Development Authority for the 2022-2023 fiscal year. 9B3 is ordinance 2022-39, a bill for an ordinance amending Title IV of the Longmont Municipal Code by establishing the Attainable Housing Fund. 9B4 is ordinance 2022-40, a bill for an ordinance adopting the budget for the City of Longmont for the year 2023. 9B5 is ordinance 2022-41, a bill for an ordinance making appropriations for the expenses and liabilities of the City of Longmont for the fiscal year beginning January 1st, 2023. 9C is ordinance 2022-42, a bill for an ordinance approving the agreement, amendment to the existing oil and gas agreements, and mutual release and associated documents in furtherance thereof. 9D is ordinance 2022-43, a bill for an ordinance authorizing the consent to Vance Brand Municipal Airport lease assignment for hangar parcel H28E to Homesick Angel LLC tenant. 9E is resolution 2022-148, a resolution of the Longmont City Council approving the intergovernmental agreement between the city and the state of Colorado for a state aviation grant for airport equipment at the Vance Brand Municipal Airport. 9F is Resolution 2022-147, a resolution of the Longmont City Council urging Longmont citizens to vote yes on Boulder County ballot issues 1A, 1B, and 1C regarding wildfire mitigation, emergency services, and transportation on the November 8th, 2022 statewide general election ballot.
Are there any council members that would like to pull items off the consent agenda? Seeing none, can I have a motion? Okay, it's been moved by Councilor Martin, seconded by Councilor Yarbrough. Let's vote. So that passes unanimously. We have one ordinance on second reading and public hearing. That is ordinance 2022-31, a bill for an ordinance amending Chapter 10.20, Section 10.20.100 of the Longmont Municipal Code on unreasonable noises, prohibited prima facie unreasonable noises. Do we have a staff report on this? No, we do not. Are there any questions from council on this ordinance? Seeing none, I'll open it up for the public comment. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Can we have a motion for this ordinance?
I'll move ordinance 2022-31.
So it's been moved by Councilor Hidalgo-Faring, seconded by Councilor Waters. Let's vote. That passes unanimously. There were no items removed from the consent agenda, so we're going to go on to the general business, which I would like Susan Bartlett to come down to give us the beneficial building electrification plan.
Thank you, Mayor Peck, council members. Thank you for the opportunity to share a little bit about the beneficial building electrification plan that's in your packet. I realize it's very long. I'm sure you all got through it. If not, hopefully the summary was a little bit easier. And I do have a slide deck here.
Can you pull the mic over?
Oh, sure. Thank you. Thank you. I'm Susan Bartlett. I'm with Longmont Power and Communications, and thanks for the time this evening. I want to start just by reiterating what building electrification is, what makes it beneficial, why it matters in Longmont, talk a little bit about our planning efforts, our key priorities that are associated with the plan, some of the considerations that are included in the plan, want to highlight the strategies that are in the plan, and then talk a little bit about what we think the potential impacts may be and the next steps. So first, building electrification is simply shifting away from using fossil fuels in buildings, so think natural gas, and shifting to using electric equipment, more efficient electric equipment in buildings. Instead, think heat pumps, electric water heating, induction cooking, that type of thing, all the while as our electric supply becomes more renewable over time. And the thing that makes it beneficial are these 5 areas at the bottom of the slide. There are environmental benefits with greenhouse gas emissions reductions, indoor and outdoor air quality benefits. Electrification also has the potential to improve quality of life, safety, folks with asthma, that kind of thing, cooling, added cooling for people that don't have cooling currently. We believe there are benefits to our electric grid that could result from smart devices in buildings that will help us manage our electric load over time, and as our supply becomes more dynamic. There's the potential for saving money, for creating good jobs in our economy, and also we want a benefit to be that electrification is deployed equitably in our community. So the reason that we need a plan is that in the pie chart here, you can see that almost 80% of our greenhouse gas emissions across the community can be attributed to energy use in buildings. And while 55%, that biggest portion of the pie, is related to electricity, as our electric supply gets cleaner, as we add more renewable energy to our supply, that part of the pie is going to get smaller. The next biggest rock there, or the next biggest part of the pie, is gas use in buildings. And so that's what we're addressing in this plan. And I'll just iterate that this plan is not directly addressing transportation, so electrification and transportation. It is focused on buildings. Another reason why we need the plan is because in 2020, City Council declared a climate emergency, and city staff convened the Climate Action Task Force. That task force came up with a climate action recommendation report. These items here, these recommendations that are listed here, are the ones that were identified as things that we need to get started on right away. There are a host of other recommendations, but these are things that staff are kind of actively engaged in, and electrification is one of those recommendations. Part of that recommendation is that staff would convene an advisory committee to help guide our planning and make sure we were focusing on community priorities, and to develop a phased plan for our community that matches up with those priorities. So our process for planning began with conducting some research, some market research about our community and some of the technologies that are available. We looked at what our existing building stock is. We looked at our potential growth over the next number of years, and we also took a look at what technologies are available that we can use in our plan and in our community. We also did convene our advisory committee that helped us identify priorities and guided our process. We also worked with a consultant to identify a variety of best practices that are associated with building electrification, and tried to match those up with our priorities. And then, based on some ranking and vetting tools and techniques, we narrowed the scope of those best practices to things that we thought would work best in Longmont, and then produced a plan. But along the way, we also developed a communications strategy. Building electrification is not an easy topic to talk about, And we wanted to be sure that we had some tools in place as we implement the strategies of the plan to be able to talk to a variety of audiences about what this means and how it will impact them and what it means in our community. And so we did that along the way. I wanted to thank our advisory committee. They spent a lot of time with us and provided really good feedback. We have two participating council members, Mayor Peck and Councilmember Martin. We also had representatives from Boulder County and Platte River Power Authority. We had two very well-informed and committed community members at large. We also had representatives from the Realtors Association and the development community, and we had subject matter experts from our staff that participated as well. And in addition to the council, the committee engagement, rather, we also hosted focus groups. We took surveys about this topic. We had one-on-one interviews with other communities that are also facing the concerns, or that have the concerns that we have and have sustainability goals like we have, and they're looking at electrification also. We took some time to talk with the Equitable Climate Action Team, the Sustainability Advisory Board, and Sustainable Resilient Longmont as part of our stakeholder engagement. And wanted to talk a little bit about the priorities that the committee identified. There are these 4 buckets of priorities, environmental impacts, so greenhouse gas emissions, health and safety, and economic impacts that are related to, cost and workforce development, market development. Also, we were very cognizant of how to distribute the benefits and the burdens equally, or with equity in mind, and did keep in mind the very important topic of housing affordability in Longmont. And then finally, we wanted to be sure that we considered the impacts to our electric grid as a municipally owned electric supplier. So in addition to some of the benefits I talked about earlier, there are a lot of considerations that are built into the plan that we have to keep in mind as we implement the strategies. And each one of the detailed strategy sections in the plan outlines some of the challenges and considerations that we have to think about and then we have to mitigate as we're implementing the strategies. Of course, economics plays a part, awareness and kind of myth busting, and I would point out a couple of things here that will hopefully be a theme through the rest of my presentation. But electrification in buildings that are poorly weatherized, that are poor performing, that have poor building envelopes don't work. So we have to address that along the way. But again, the strategies include a lot of the things that we must consider as we implement the strategies of the plan. So we started with about 25 best practices that were developed in the inventory, and working with our committee and with our consultants, we narrowed the scope of that to 13 strategies that we think make sense for Longmont. And they're categorized here by type, if you will. So some are policy related, some are program related, some are tied to our partners, and some are financing mechanisms. And there's a lot of overlap. We just needed some buckets to put them in to kind of keep us organized in our thinking. And then the color coding on this slide has to do with what we need to do first, and what we think we should start on right away. The ones in orange, those strategies in orange, are things that we believe we can start working on right now, and more importantly, we believe those are the strategies that build the foundation for us to be successful with the rest of the strategies. So, education and outreach, having good housing policy so that we don't create unintended consequences that adversely affect folks that are the least able to kind of accommodate that. Building the market for electrification equipment, training the workforce. So if we create the demand, we want to be able to have the market that can supply that demand and the workforce that can install it. So kind of building the groundwork is what those orange strategies are. The green strategies are things that we think we can start working on right now, but we know they're going to take a little longer, a little more runway to develop. They'll probably take a little more resource. And those are things that we feel like we can get started on. The blue strategies are things that we believe are really good ideas, and we need to do a little more work and development of those ideas to understand how they might be applied here in Longmont. So if we were to implement all 13 of the strategies in the plan based on some high-level modeling, we have the potential to reduce our total community-wide greenhouse gas emissions by 20% by 2050, and that's over our 2016 baseline, which is what our greenhouse gas inventory is based on. That's a big lift. It's a lot of work. 13 is a lot of strategies, and each one has its own work elements and requirements. So there may be additional staff required or redirection and, of course, funding directed at these strategies. And we have 3 categories here. Voluntary strategies includes things like education and workforce development and incentive development, that kind of thing. Those strategies have a relatively small impact on greenhouse gas reduction. But if we don't do those things first, we can't have the impact in the other areas that we need to have over time. And with the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act in August, that's likely going to goose the market a little bit. So we may see that voluntary strategy impact grow some. We don't know exactly what that adoption rate is going to look like, but that could definitely bolster the voluntary strategies. And I wanted to take a little sideline here to talk about the Inflation Reduction Act. There's a ton of information out there. I don't have all of it at my fingertips, but I wanted to give you a sense for the timeline on the parts of that act that would affect consumers directly here in Longmont. The tax credits that are going to be available for installing energy efficient equipment or solar or electrification equipment or improving home envelopes, those things are really going to kick in at the beginning of 2023 in January. And then the rebates that are available for a lot of the equipment that can be used to electrify homes and businesses, those are going to be run through state energy offices. State energy offices have until end of summer of 2024 to get their plans approved. So there's some time between now and then that we can really be digging in and working on providing information to consumers in our community so that they can make good decisions about their space. Not everything works for everyone, and if we can provide really credible information and direct them to resources to improve the efficiency of their buildings, then a lot of these other things are going to make more sense for them and be more economical for them. So I just wanted to give you a sense for that. And also kind of the runway looking out. This is not like a 1 or 2 year and done kind of thing. There's a bit of a runway on these opportunities for consumers, so we can build on the education that we want to start right away. I did want to talk a little more about building code strategy, because if you remember this chart here, that's where we get the biggest impact from our efforts. And the way that this strategy is proposed in the plan is based on some Longmont has been a participation in the Department of Local Affairs Regional Code Cohort, and I'll talk about that in a minute also. So we based our strategy on kind of following the recommendations of this cohort for our region. And that includes in phase one, we've already, you have already approved the 2021 International Energy Conservation Code update. And that's on a 3-year cycle. But in 2023, the recommendation in the plan is to go ahead and adopt some of the efficiency amendments that weren't included last time, and also move ahead with electric preferred amendments. And electric preferred amendments still allow for mixed fuel new construction. But if you're going to opt for mixed fuel construction, you need to meet a higher threshold for efficiency in your building, for your building envelope. And so all electric is encouraged but not required. Kind of lets us, it lets us ramp up. It lets us have those conversations with builders and developers and get them thinking about the benefits of building all electric in the future. Then the recommendation is with the next phase and the next cycle of the IECC code in 2027 to adopt all electric new construction for buildings, with some exceptions for our commercial buildings that are going to have complicated process equipment and things that we just don't have the technology answers for them yet. So there would be some exceptions there. And then the third phase would be coincident with the 2030 IECC cycle. And the recommendation is to have amendments that would require replacement equipment. So this is that existing building chunk, if you will. The other two are new construction, where in existing buildings, if equipment fails, then there would be a requirement to install electric equipment as a replacement. And a little bit more background on the Dola Regional Code Cohort. You can see the list of other communities that are also participating in this cohort, and the intent was to establish some consistency across jurisdictions in our area, and also to encourage all of these jurisdictions to adopt the latest version of the IECC as it becomes available. And I'll go back to the key of having really well-built, well-performing buildings to begin with. So if we can build really high-performing buildings, those buildings have lower energy load. And that's a really good thing. And then how we supply those buildings is then another conversation. But if we can build really good buildings first, that's really important in our goals. So having some consistency among jurisdictions in our area is important. It helps contractors and builders and developers kind of know the lay of the land in all of our areas. It also may help with compliance, and it may help our own staff in educating builders and developers and property owners as they move through the process. The code cohort started in January of this year. It goes through fall, so we're getting to the end. The first phase, again, emphasize that consistent adoption of the IECC along with the recommended amendments for efficiency, electric vehicles, solar, and electrification. The second part that's underway right now is defining a roadmap to get to net zero new construction by 2050. And we have 2 city participants, 2 city representatives that are attending the cohort and representing Longmont in the cohort. And what we'd like to do is have them get through the end of that phase, come back with the recommendations from the cohort, and come back to City Council with some additional recommendations around building codes. I wanted to share that the stakeholders that we talked with said we need to move deliberately. And City Council and the Climate Action Task Force asked us to develop a phased plan. And that was our target. Right now, the market is really uncertain. It's not going to be uncertain forever, but it is. There are the Inflation Reduction Act impacts that we're unwinding, and how those will interact with our own programs and with other state legislation that kind of stacks programs on top of programs. We're sorting through that, and we know that that will have an impact on some of the strategies in our plan. We also, as a city, need to prepare for the strategies in the plan. We need to develop our processes. We need to work with our partners. We have existing programs already underway, and we want to make sure that we're leveraging those programs wisely as we start to move into electrification activities. And then we also need to be mindful of our grid. We've heard a lot about AMI tonight. Having AMI data gives us really good insight into the health and the vulnerabilities of our electric grid. It helps us understand, especially on the existing building front, what might be necessary if we have a neighborhood that goes all electric. You know, we want to be able to understand that before we're just in the middle of it. And I would commend the Climate Action Task Force and City Council for kind of highlighting this as a priority. I think we would all rather be proactive as electrification comes our way than reactive. So it gives us, our phased approach gives us a chance to work through this process. And also it allows the market to develop, and it gives us that opportunity that we need to talk with our constituents, with the folks that we serve, and provide them with credible information that they can make good decisions with. I would say that it's really important for us to continue with our regional collaborations. We are not alone in deciding that this is important for our community. We're not alone in having really ambitious climate goals. And we certainly don't have to break trail on every front. We don't want to be lagging at the end, but working together, I think we have a little more momentum that way, and we need to continue to participate in those regional collaborations. So I will see if you have any questions about the plan.
I was waiting for you, Councilor Martin. It doesn't want to.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. I was actually waiting to see if anybody wanted to get in first. So the first thing I want to say is that with the broad brush, this is an excellent plan. It has everything that the city will need to do in it. It has a reasonable sequence of events. It is equitable in that it has gone very far into the kind of problems that people are really truly going to encounter as this process goes forward. I think we had somebody fearful that they were going to be forced into an electric vehicle when they couldn't afford it or didn't want it. And this plan doesn't do anything like that. I mean, it doesn't address electric vehicles really at all, except some, infrastructure work on it. But it doesn't do other stuff like that. It doesn't, I talked to someone at Coffee with Council once who thought that we were going to come into his house and pull out his gas stove. This plan doesn't do stuff like that. It helps people along the road, and it's very enlightened about the way it does that. So overall, I love this plan. I have a few concerns about it that I would like to bring up, and I think that probably over the next 2 or 3 months, and we're forced to do this anyway by certain things that have happened since this plan was written, we're going to have to do some refinement. So first, I think that some elements of this plan are more than procedure, more than strategy, and edge over into policy. And I believe that in those cases that the council needs to debate those matters of policy and make sure that those are addressed by council, and that that the public outreach, people get a chance to speak about it, and that what happens, what becomes part of the process has got the stamp of approval of council policy on it. So I don't think because of that tonight is the final word on this plan. Second, there are some qualitative goals in the plan that I think are too weak, honestly. And some of them are probably council policy that goes all the way back to 2016. When we had a wildly different regulatory environment. And so, some of those need to be revisited, especially now knowing the newest IPCC intelligence about what greenhouse gases do with regard to planetary heating, and in particular what not emitting does to planetary heating. We need to make some of those goals more aggressive, and root out all of the quantification that's just gotten carried forward, maybe not quite appropriately. Second, of course, third, of course, the Inflation Reduction Act is going to require us to adjust our timeline because we're not going to have all of the relevant rulemakings that will tell us how much these changes are going to cost us, and how much these changes are going to cost our residents, and how much these changes are going to need to be subsidized for our residents, because, oh boy, are there some good subsidies in there for our residents. And so we need to adjust the timeline to make sure that those are all taken into account. And it's actually a good thing because, as I think Susan said, although did not emphasize, and the plan says it a bit more, but also doesn't maybe emphasize it, the building envelope improvements, the efficiency improvements to buildings, especially people's houses, need to be done before any major electrification steps happen, and it's a big deal. And so the IRA timeline gives us 2 years to really focus on that. And one of the policy goals that we need to set is the penetration of how much those building envelope improvements, how much it's going to reach into this community. Lisa's over there nodding. There's been a program for a long time, a good program, just not that many people use it. And we need to understand that their non-use of those programs is coming right out of their pockets, and they need to use it. And the last thing is, I think we need to re-examine how we comply with the Dola guidance. A number of the cities on Susan's list already have adopted codes that are out ahead of the Dola guidance. And I absolutely agree that we should be up to speed with the Dola guidance and never, ever fall behind, as many municipalities do, and it keeps them from getting grants when they do. But I do not see any harm, since we're doing workforce development anyway, in being out ahead. And our other climate goals are aggressive enough that we do need to be out ahead on some of these codes. And I think that the obvious one is all electric buildings. So I am a big yes on this plan, but I want to make sure that it does not achieve the status of Holy Writ quite yet. And I honestly couldn't, in terms of the council regulations or the council options, there's two versions of it. One, I think, in the plan and one in the council communications, and they're not the same. And so I'm not quite sure what the council's motion, how the council's motion needs to be worded. But, you know, I am for the adoption of this plan in the broad brush with the understanding that there are some updates that need to be reconsidered, including at the council retreat.
So Councillor Martin, why don't you make the motion?
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Definitely.
When you mentioned the quantitative information in the plan, one of the things that I think we'll want council input on is whether or not to use the estimated impacts from building electrification and the new numbers related to waste reduction to recalculate the greenhouse gas emissions targets that we have. Is that what you were talking about?
That's one of the things that we were talking about. Also, just greenhouse gas emissions from housing needs to be reduced by 20% at a certain time, and I can't remember. 20% is too low. You know, when there are no houses that use natural gas anymore, except for concrete in the foundation, it's going to be zero. So, you know, I think that we need to refigure that target. And although it's informed by science and by work that the staff, together with our consultants, does, I think that it is a policy, just like 100% clean energy by 2030 is a policy, and so it needs to be. That goal needs to be revisited. I think we need to set a goal for building envelope improvements. And if there is one at all in the existing sustainability plan, it's a few hundred homes, and I'm not sure, have we met it yet? We've never met it. Yeah, and we need to meet it. That's a big deal. So, and that's a council policy that needs to be adopted, in my opinion. If that clarifies what I'm talking about.
It does, and I don't want to put Lisa on the spot, but she was hoping to get some indication from council whether or not to go ahead and incorporate this new information that we have from the work of the Electrification Committee and on the waste front to revise those. So I'm going to take that as kind of a yes on that front.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's everything we should do, but that should definitely be done.
So can you, Susan, restate what it is that you're revising, that you're putting into this?
And it wouldn't be me, it would be Lisa and the sustainability team. You know, they manage our greenhouse gas inventory and kind of track the progress on all the climate action recommendations and keep the dashboard that's available on the website. And currently our emissions reduction goals are 60% by 2030 and 60. Sorry. 66% by 2030, 69% by 2050.
Okay, and is that what you are going to revise this with?
So with
Not
council,
you, I understand.
right, with council direction, Lisa and her team would revise that target metric.
Are there other counselors that want to weigh in on this? Should we revise that target metric? Harold, do you have any input on? Do we need to revise it at this point, is my question.
So council can give us direction to look at it and bring it back to you all, or to the point that Councilmember Martin made, is we could bring this as part of your retreat and study the retreat, so you can move through this, or you can do it. I'm not sure target in Lisa's plan, so in some ways it makes sense to keep the it
Yeah,
consistent and move it over into this.
I don't see the,
But I think what you have in there is lower than what Lisa will bring in, right?
If we add the work from this plan and from the waste reduction work that Lisa and her team have done, it puts us at a higher, closer to our. So 86% if we bundle all of that up together, instead of 69% at 2050, it would be 86% at 2050.
okay, great.
That to me
makes
makes
sense.
sense to incorporate both of these as we're looking at it. And
Right.
obviously, I think we look at these as stretch goals too, and some of these others we need to look at it, and so that's a piece where we're going to have to push,
Right.
and understand that I think they are stretch goals in this.
I understand that this, that greenhouse gas reductions through this electricity plan is really good, but for me, as far as the city and the state reducing greenhouse gases, we can't leave out the greenhouse gas reduction through automobiles, transportation as well. And that is part of the electric car, changing from combustible engine to electricity.
And I think that's what's in
That's the
Lisa's.
aggregate of reducing the greenhouse gas, isn't
Right,
it?
and all of those things are included, certainly
Right.
not just these specific activities, but Lisa and her team track all of the different activities. It's transportation, it's waste, it's water.
Correct.
It's all of those things add up to that 86%. And the previous goals were based on estimates for what, kind of a best guess of what electrification might contribute and what waste reduction might contribute. So now we have a little more granularity. It's more refined, and that can be rolled in. Did you want to?
Yeah, Mayor Peck and members of council, Lisa Knobloch, Sustainability Manager with Strategic Integration. The previous greenhouse gas emissions reductions targets that were identified through our greenhouse gas inventory report and that we've done subsequent modeling on for the last handful of years initially didn't incorporate building electrification because that wasn't direction from council at the time in which we did that report. So what Susan is talking about and the recommendations that are in the building electrification plan, we worked with our consultants that have been doing our inventory to model the greenhouse gas emissions reductions impact from those recommendations in the plan and are essentially adding that into those overall recommendations that do incorporate electricity, natural gas, transportation, and then a small sliver of other things. Those are really the big three things. We have a number of other strategies in the sustainability plan and our transportation roadmap that get at those other areas as well. This is really the piece that addresses specifically that natural gas component, which was not incorporated in those targets previously.
And I think some things that we're working on parallel that we've talked about. So obviously our work in the Housing Authority and what we're doing in housing generally, we're involved in different projects. And some of the projects that we're modeling right now, we are looking at all electric developments. And I've had some communications with some of you to say, we're going to be learning through this because I think, and we've heard some of it on the assumptions that, they don't recommend heat pumps in certain areas and these types of things. Well, the reality is, if you can focus on the front end and the building envelope of the home that you're building, then you give yourself some opportunities to look at all electric neighborhoods. And it's different than some of the all electric neighborhoods that we do have in our community where the homes are older. Or like the home that I lived in Lubbock, Texas in 1998 that was all electric in a similar climate when my bills went crazy when it got cold. The technology's changed.
Correct.
And so we're also looking at this in some of the development projects that we're working on. And as we start economics and what it means to the price points, both in production and then as you we will be sharing some of that information to this group. And it is the intent to look at getting a lot of units on our fully electric.
That's the goal.
And that's the tension also, right?
Yes.
We want, we have ambitious climate goals, but we also have goals around making sure that people can afford to live here. And finding a way to do that is easy. And it, you know, we just need to be about how we do it.
Okay. So Councillor Martin, you want one last comment? And I'm going to call the question.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. I'm more brief this time. I just want to give a little pep talk to the staff. There should be no goals, not stretch goals. Stuff this time, it needs to push ourselves harder because an emergency. I bet the city manager will aver that no staff member was ever fired because of failing to stretch goal. So they are nothing. If right about that?
Yeah, actually, my and this is more, I guess, to talk to people about what philosophy is. I routinely talk about I want you to be creative. I want you to reach. And if you have effort mistakes, I have a lot of patience for effort mistakes. And so that's what we talk about this. And I think some of those, we look at it, and some of it's in their work that we're, you know, I get the component on electrification and attention in that. That's why we're looking at other projects that we're developing as we get better sense, more accurately inform, and then we can and say, here's what we're doing, here's what we've learned, and here's the there's a lot of conversations that will come into play, and I think the more we can educate and communicate in this, the stronger we're going to be when we start rolling these components out.
That's right. We already have, thanks in large part to Lisa, a robust sustainability and social equity organization, you know, a partnership between the staff, the council, and the public that are going to make sure that we don't hurt people. It's going to push us to help people more. Okay. And that's why our goals should stretch.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Can we have a vote on one of the directions, either accept the plan, direct staff to proceed with the plan strategies as resources, or redirect staff on the plan, or direct staff not to proceed with plan strategies? Councillor Martin.
If nobody else will try their hand at the, I will. I of this plan with the understanding that from time to time over the next 2 years there will need to be revisions, including discussion of this topic at the council retreat and subsequent study sessions so that the debate happens in the most public manner that we can have happen. I don't think there is a single thing in this plan that
just the motion.
Sorry. So the motion is to proceed with the understanding that there may be modifications in the next few months.
Perfect. I'll second that. So do we have any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, let's vote. And that passes unanimously. Thank you, Susan and Lisa and your team.
Thank you, Mayor.
For all the
Thank
work
you,
you've put in.
council members.
We're now at final call, public invited to be heard.
Mayor, before we go to that, Eugene will talk to you. There was a ministerial issue with the sound ordinance, and he has a plan to address it.
All the three of you walk out.
Mayor and Council, Eugene May again, City Attorney. So I noticed an error on page 59 of the packet. The reference to this section of the code was incorrect. It's currently 10.20.100. It should be 10.20.090. And since this is part of our criminal code, I would suggest that you amend the ordinance formally, and I can walk you through that. I'd suggest the first step would be a motion to reconsider A on unreasonable noises.
Moved and seconded for reconsideration of on, what was that one?
Unreasonable noises.
2022-31.
Correct.
Let's vote. It's okay.
Surprise, Dawn.
Should we just do a voice vote or a hand vote on this one? Okay. I know you will. Oh, that's, okay. Councilor Waters and seconded by Councilor Martin. Perfect, thank you. Great, that passes unanimously to reconsider.
And Mayor and Council, the incorrect reference is in two places on that first page of the ordinance. So my recommendation would be a motion to amend ordinance 2022-31 to replace to section 10.20.100 with 10.20.090 on page 1, lines 2 and 14 of the ordinance.
I didn't write that down, Eugene. What are we replacing it with? You've got it. Okay. So can we have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Councilor Martin.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. I move to amend, listen closely to me.
I am.
Item 2022-31 to substitute the code number 10.20.100 with 10.20.090 on page 1 on lines 2 and 14.
It's been moved by Councilor Martin, seconded by Councilor Hidalgo-Faring to amend ordinance 2022-31. Let's vote. Unanimously. Thank you, Eugene.
And finally, a motion to approve the amended ordinance.
Second. Okay.
Thank you, Council.
The amended ordinance, the motion was made by Councilor Waters, second by Councilor Hidalgo-Faring. Any discussion? Doesn't look like it. Let's vote. And that passes unanimously. And now we are at final call public to be invited to be heard. Is there anybody in the public that would like to speak? Give us your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Mike Sandoval, 242 East Mountain View. I've been a Longmont resident for 49 years. The electrification, by year 2050, I mean, I'm 60, I'll be 90 years old. I'll be dead by then, so that's too long. I'm a landlord, and I'm looking at, okay, quick fixes. One thing I can do to reduce the greenhouse effect would be maybe get a fixed thermometer, okay? Maybe program it by the city. The cooling, it can go down to maybe 78, and heating, it could only go to whatever, 78. Okay, so here's the range. It cost me $25. We're done. It's a quick fix. Okay, and I don't have to wait till 2050. Okay, and maybe solar panels on the house, and maybe have a battery. Maybe that'll work. I don't know if this, who's going to pay for it, but I got older properties, so that's a quick fix. I can't re-electrify everything.
No.
So anyway, reason I really came in here is I'm a landlord. I got some people smoke meth in my property. It's been damaged. Process, basically, I've even talked to the housing, but basically, there's no equity here. Okay, basically, the tenant, she was just distributing, using. She spent like 3 weeks in jail, was released. My tenants call the cops like 30 times. They come down to the knock on the door, tenant don't open the door, nothing happened. And then I called the insurance company to help pay for it, nothing happened. The tenant, she's not paying for it, so it's all on me. So the equity is, there's no equity, this loss is not being distributed properly. I called my insurance company, they canceled me. So it's all on me. So where's the equity here? Nowhere, it's on me. So what I'm trying to do, and I know HUD as housing has had the same problem here, where there's been some meth users, you had mobile home, $100,000, whatever you pay for a mobile home, and you just throw it away. You just threw the mobile home in the trash. So, you know, but it's not your money, so it's not a big deal. Me, it's my money. I'm like, I can't do that. So maybe you could have re-rented the property to some homeless people on the street. Keep them there to get off the street. There you go. So I'm going to narrow it down. I got 33 seconds. I would like to have a city pay for testing. Almost considered a hotbed for meth. Meth, maybe no longer have smoking, but maybe have people shoot it up and use pills. Smoking destroys the property. Meth, the code basically right now is manufacturing and smoking. They're the same rules. It should separate the two. Smoking should have its own rules, and manufacturing should be, yes, a contaminated property. So basically, there's ways to clean it. You can oxidize the meth, and an owner can use that to clean it. It could cost $100 to do this.
Really empathize with you. This is a huge problem in buildings, in many buildings. If there's anyone, can we have him?
We've actually been talking to him.
Okay.
The issues that are in play, the rules related to death are state law, that it comes under the county health departments for enforcement. So that's embedded within the state law. We have to follow the same rules, and definitely can sympathize on this issue because we've run into it a lot recently with housing authority. But we have contact information so we can talk.
Okay, let's talk about it too later. Thank you so much for speaking. So we are at Mayor and Council comments. Are there any comments by councilors? Councilor Waters.
Thanks, Mayor Peck. Tonight we passed the ordinances that we needed to pass for as we get ready to, I guess, pass a resolution, adopt a resolution on the budget. Is that the sequence coming up in a future meeting? So we'll get all that done in the next, I think, the next regular meeting.
Correct.
And then we'll be beyond the whole decision-making process about priorities and where the money, how the money follows priorities. But it leaves still the question, and I know you're going to get tired of having me ask this, but I'm going to keep asking it just to keep it alive until we get whatever the outcomes are that we expect to produce in 2023 under the heading of park development, right?
Correct.
Back to that conversation about accountability and what we're going to hold ourselves accountable for and what can we report to the public. With the understanding that the intent is obviously to produce, and if we don't achieve what we set out, to identify how close we came, what we learned. It's not to catch people doing things wrong, but I'm not going to let that slip away. So I know Joni, I think, is working on something. Let me ask again, you'd mentioned early December that we would have.
So I think they're moving a little bit faster than that. I know that Joni's indicated to me she's met with the staff and they have a plan and proposal that they need to present to me. And so we're trying to go over that in terms of how we can hit the target of at least 6 parks in 5 years, or 5 parks in. And so they have it ready. I just haven't gone over that with them.
When I would assume 6 parks in 5 years, there are phases, like we will be this far on those 6 parks at the end of 2023, then 24.
Yeah, some rough estimates. I think it'll depend on the approach that we take in terms of the contracting piece, but it'll be an outline of that, yes.
Right. I can assure you that our Parks Advisory Board will be keenly interested.
Yep.
As are, others who we've heard from, our pickleball community and others. So, thanks.
That's good news. We're moving on. So, Councilor Hidalgo-Ferring.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. So I was going to throw in a couple of comments, but I think one of them I could wait until we have the actual discussion on the gun ordinances, but I am appreciative that we're able to bring this forward to the public, so thank you. The other one is to, whoever's listening, last Saturday we had the Dia de los Muertos family celebration, and last year when Councilmember Rodriguez and I co-hosted, the festivities or all the booths extended from Main Street on 4th to Kaufman. So it was a little section. This year, it actually went around the corner into Kaufman. So we had a lot more vendors, food trucks. Boulder County Public Health was out there giving vaccines, flu shots. And it was an amazing mix of, families, our senior groups that were out there. We had El Comité, we had just different advocacy groups, as well as local artists. So I bought some really neat jewelry and some shirts, and it was very exciting to see. And this year I co-hosted with Justin from Veach from the museum. So the museum did a phenomenal job. The Longmont Downtown Authority did a phenomenal job at organizing this and putting it together. And also, I just like to remind folks to come out to the museum. Mm-hmm. I have my altar out there as well for my mom, and Marcelo Shacklove, I believe his last name is, and he has what is it? It's Fernandez. Sorry. He had, I don't know why I said that, but anyway, so he has Marcelo Fernandez has a altar out there. It was gorgeous, so please come and see that. Thank you. I'm very tired.
No, but it was enjoyable.
Yes, it was.
Councilor Yarbrough.
Thank you, Mayor Peck. I just wanted to say, I want to say thank you to Councilmember Waters for sending out that update that helps me to know what's going on when you emailed it. So I just want to say thank you for that. But I also want to ask a question. If anyone, I heard on KGNU News today about Babbitt Ranch in Florida, who have all of those solar panels for their town. I think it's around 50,000 people. And Hurricane Ian did not touch them. And their electricity stayed on, to where surrounding cities who were affected by Hurricane Ian are now sheltering in Babbitt Ranch. So I was just wondering if anyone knew anything about their electrification throughout that entire city and how they're doing it, how they did it, and they're still, what you say, Robert?
It was specifically built that way.
Right, the owner of the land he was actually an NFL player. That's what I heard from Green Bay or something. And he purchased all this land and made it, started out with all solar panels, and everything is electric. So I don't know. I'm still learning. So I was just wondering if anybody knew anything about that and if we heard anything or looked into anything. I just thought it was pretty cool that there's a whole city that was bypassed by the hurricane in Florida that was like 30 miles from the ocean, you know, and not affected at all in all electric. So that was just a question. I don't know if Councilwoman Martin may have heard about that.
Actually, no. So thank you. I'm going to go home and look it up now. And yeah, a lot of the times when people talk about this or that infrastructure being vulnerable, it's because the vulnerability wasn't designed out of it. And this just goes to show that you can do that. You know, just burying overhead electric transmission lines is another one. Or, you know, or the city distribution line. Longmont's gone a really long way toward doing that, and every time another electric line gets buried, somebody's safer, and our city is more robust in terms of its utilities. If I may, this is going to be brief. I know I've talked a lot today, but it's kind of my thing, you know. There are a couple things that I feel like people think stuff's being put over on them. And I would like to say that the public has certain rights to a vote on issues, and they mostly have to do with money, right? So the public has to vote for a new tax. There's no new tax associated with any of the things that we're doing in terms of electrifying the city. The public gets to vote on borrowing, right? Even when there isn't a new tax associated with the borrowing. So for example, our ballot question 3C, which will pay for a big chunk of finally completing, in good time by the way, the flood restoration project, is borrowing without increasing the taxes. And that means it's good for everybody because it's going to happen faster than it would if we didn't borrow, and it'll probably be cheaper and better than if we didn't borrow. Similarly, the public doesn't get a vote about how we deliver the electricity we have. That's not something that the public would vote on because the public doesn't have the expertise to do it. So we've never asked you whether we should put our electric distribution system underground. We're just doing that as fast as we can. And it's making everything better in Longmont. We don't ask what brand of equipment goes into the transformers at our substation or in the boxes at the end of the block. The staff has expertise in that, and they decide what brands are best, and they make the best purchase and get the best deal they can. And it's pretty much the same with the electric meter. They're part of the infrastructure. And that's just all I wanted to say.
Thank you. So, seeing no other comments, Mayor, City Manager, I'm sorry. But you could be Mayor.
No, no comments, Mayor, Council.
City Attorney.
No comments, Mayor? Oh,
I did have one.
Oh.
Vision Zero, November 15th. The Vision Zero presentation, you all wanted a date. That'll be November 15th. Bill's confirmed that.
Great.
Assuming some scheduling issues based on some things that have been added to the agenda, so we'll have to look at that. But that's a date right now.
Okay. Perfect. All right. We need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor? Raise your hand. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.